Hello everyone and welcome to today's Dragonrider Happy Hour. Please let me know if you can hear me okay. For those of you who this might be your first time joining for a Dragonrider Happy Hour, welcome to my bar. This is a bar that we built inside our house at the start of pandemic, so you are some of our very first guests in this bar, so welcome. Dragonrider Happy Hour, the whole idea of this was to have people over to my bar to discuss the latest gaming headlines and tech news from the week. And so that's exactly what we do. Today, we are going to be talking about things like, is God mode ruining gaming as we know it? We'll talk about the Steam Deck, how that's different from the Stream Deck, what those new things are, tap into a little bit about the news regarding Netflix entering the video game scene, as well as what the heck's going on with EA Play. We'll get into all of it. If you're here specifically for the gaming news and not necessarily the hangout, feel free to jump to the chapter of the news topic that you want to discuss, and I'll be chaptering this. This is live right now, but I'll be chaptering this as soon as the live stream is over, so you will have that available to you. But for those of you who are here live, welcome! So let's see, you guys are saying sound is good, perfect. ShadeX says, we also have gin and tonic. You know what? Let's go ahead and get into our drink for the day. Bartender Nate, what are we drinking today?
Hello, ShadeX. Yeah, that sounds really cool. So it sounds like what you're saying for those of you who are not on Discord, ShadeX was sharing in the Dragonrider Happy Hour section that on their bar they are setting up an outside bar and they have 2 beer taps. And I think you said 4 cocktail taps, or maybe I reversed that. 4 beer taps and 2 cocktail taps. And you listed what it was. It looked like it was a pre-mixed cocktail in that bottle is what I was seeing, which was a gin cocktail, but that's super cool. What we're drinking today is a gin fizz. So this is a classic cocktail. This came out in the Prohibition. So if you don't know anything about American history, in the Prohibition, we outlawed the right to have alcohol in this country. And basically what happened is everybody still just made alcohol and drank alcohol, but because it wasn't commercially produced, the quality of it typically was very low. So when they talk about bathtub gin, that was a real thing. People made gin in their bathtubs versus having like the distilleries they have today where all the impurities are refined out of it. So as you might imagine, the alcohol quality tasted less than stellar. So hence what cocktails were. They basically took whatever fruit they had in the area and sugar, and that's what made a cocktail. And so this gin fizz is like quintessential that time period. It's just gin, it's lemon juice and sugar, and then you shake it really hard in ice so that it's like super cold, and then you top it off with just a little bit of club soda, which is the fizz. I made it with this Empress gin that I had for last week's cocktail just because I'm kind of in love with this gin right now. It's really delightful in terms of like the taste profile, but also it just makes a really pretty cocktail. So as always, enjoy responsibly.
Cheers! And before you leave, Bartender Nate, ShadeX says yes, they are pre-mixed on tap. And Christian wants to know, when do we get to subscribe to a service where Nate ships us the drinks in advance? This is the side hustle you've been looking for, man.
Yeah, you know, we're working on that. How's
that? Perfect!
All right, thank you guys.
Cheers! One more. I know we cheers, but we're going to cheers again.
Good.
It's good. Nate was like, I don't know how you're going to feel about it because it's better really cold, and he made them just a little bit ago. We have a little bit of condensation on the glass. But no, it's really good. Thank you, Bartender Nate. Dun, 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 dun. And Kelly says, if the alcohol's free, you won't need a license, you know? Nate and I will brainstorm that. How about that? I know a lot of the people asking that probably want this are international, so I imagine that will pose some complications, but maybe, you know, the drink recipes ahead of time. I mean, we do that with Discord anyway. Anyway, I hope everybody is having a lovely week. I hope the wind down your work week is going great, and that you're ready and kicking off your weekend. For me, I don't know why. I was just talking about this with Nate a little bit before we went live. I'm like feeling like I'm running a little slow today, so I don't know why I'm run down, but I just feel like everything's moving in slow-mo. I originally wanted to do a stream this morning to Twitch and Amazon, and that didn't really happen. And I'm not going to go too much into it because I don't really know what it is yet, but I'm going through some medical testing. So keep your fingers crossed for me that everything is A-okay and checks out. But we'll see what happens with that, and I'll update you when I have actual news to share. But I'm wondering if that's part of the reason I'm feeling a little run down. But that is all done. I had some of that done this morning, which is why I didn't stream when I wanted to. But I know Nate talked about with this drink in particular, the gin fizz, having to like shake it really hard with really cold ice. If you want to see that in action, I did put up both a YouTube stories and an Instagram stories, and I think I tweeted it out because I was going to do a story being like, hey, we're going live for Dragonrider Happy Hour, and then all I could hear was shake a shake a shake a shake a shake a shake a shake. So I just made that the video, and it was very funny to me. So I hope that it also brings you a chuckle on this day. Thank you for the good luck. No, not kid number 2, Haswell. Definitely not even close to that. All right. How are the thermals and sound on my laptop? A-okay. Or if you mean the laptop meaning me for the medical tests. Corey Gassner says there's YouTube stories now. Corey, there are YouTube stories and shorts, and they're both pretty much the same length of time, but for 2 different purposes. I'm still catching up on it, says the old lady from her rocking chair that did YouTube back in the olden days of YouTube. But yeah, there are. So anyway, on to the gaming news for the week. Let's go ahead and start with, I know I titled this as God Mode Ruining Gaming. There was a really interesting conversation that kind of kicked off this week in the games industry. And basically, Double Fine announced that Psychonauts 2 will have an invincibility toggle, which immediately makes me think of Game Genie for NES and what that allowed you to do with NES games. So when Double Fine announced that there will be an invincibility toggle for Psychonauts 2, they said, so the players of all abilities and ages will be able to complete the game no matter their skill level. And they said this when they were quote tweeting a tweet from Xbox that said, beating the game on the lowest difficulty is still beating the game. So this, of course, spawned a huge conversation around difficulty in video games. And this is a conversation that's been ongoing for a little bit now, certainly in the games industry, where people feel like, isn't that ruining games or ruining the achievement that is beating the game if you're making beating the game basically something everyone can do, even if you're not fine-tuning your skills to beat the game. And it's, like I said, there's been a long conversation around this in gaming. And Double Fine's answer to that was, all people should be able to enjoy games. This is a direct quote, by the way. All people should be able to enjoy games. All ages, all possible needs. It's an ongoing and important process for our industry and a challenge we need to meet. End of the day, we want you to have fun, to laugh, to experience a story that affects you on whatever terms you want. Now, this is something not only discussed by people in the gaming industry for a long time, but like even more studios have been discussing this publicly. EA talked about their dynamic difficulty system because they want you to engage in the game longer. So they're talking about maybe having this type of dynamic difficulty where if you play a game and it's getting to a point where it's too hard for you, the game's difficulty will auto adjust. Again, with the intent that they want you playing their games longer, which to me opens a whole other can of worms. And so my question to you is, where do you stand in this argument? I definitely understand the knee-jerk response of like, but I beat that game and it was really hard and that was a cool thing that I did. But I don't think that other people beating the game, as long as it's not a competitive game where you're playing against each other, I don't think that other people beating the game on an easier difficulty diminishes the sense of achievement that I get from beating it on maybe a harder difficulty. And this also ties into accessibility and all of that. So anyway, let's see where we go. Let's see. Humor Jubai says, I'm not against it. Jimmy Sprinkle says, isn't just buying the items in the digital store also like Game Genie? I mean, kind of. It depends on the genre of game, right? Scott Pledger says, I'm not looking to push my already non-existent skills. I just want to chill, relax, and have fun with the games. Valid point. Daniel Casaban says, I think whatever makes a game enjoyable is okay. Not everyone is a serious gamer. Kevin says, I think it's okay, but there should be better endings, Easter eggs, or something for those who don't use cheats. That's a great idea as like an extra reward depending what you beat it on. For me, I kind of think of it as like when you go to a fancy restaurant, right? And they don't allow alterations to the meal because this is how the chef intended it. I want to try to play the game as the chef intended it. So you'll see, like, as the devs intended it, I should say. You'll see on Gong Show and stuff like that, or when I do playthroughs of games, I will initially always try to play on the normal setting because I feel like that is the experience the developers wanted me to have. Now, if I start hitting a wall where the game is no longer fun or I'm not able to progress any farther, then that's when I personally, this is just my line, everyone's line is different, but for me, that's when I appreciate those settings, those difficulty settings being there so that if I need the help, I can use it. Now, sometimes I like to use that help to fine tune my skills. And then once I get better to the point where I feel like I can turn the difficulty back up, I will. So that's a tool that you can use to learn the mechanics instead of just hitting a brick wall and maybe giving up on a game, which is where the whole idea of EA's dynamic difficulty comes in. But I also don't like the difficulty being changed on me without me knowing it, which is why I have some issues with the dynamic difficulty thing. Himara Jubai says, I mean, let people buy and play the game. It's that, or they don't buy it and watch walkthroughs on YouTube. That is true. And Zepha says a lot of games have difficulty settings already. They absolutely do. But you know, this idea of an invincibility mode or a god mode, which is much more akin to what Game Genie was when we were younger, is that ruining gaming is what I titled this as, because that's a lot of the discussion that I saw and the discourse that I saw around this on gaming forums, on Twitter, etc. But I will say, as someone who has a small child who is just barely learning that, like, when I push the joystick in this direction, the person walks this way, he gets supremely frustrated with video games. And he's learning, and I'm starting him on games that are a little easier. So if there are games saying, like, hey, in normal mode, you know, this is a very challenging game, but we do have an invincibility or a god mode for maybe younger players who are just learning, or again, people who might not have the hand-eye coordination to complete this in normal mode, I don't personally think like that takes away from my sense of achievement. Like, I feel really awesome about the fact that I beat Celeste with the normal difficulty, because that game was hard. And there were times that I questioned that decision and was like, should I put it on easy? This is tough. And then I was like, no, I'm going to do it. And I felt really good about that achievement. But also no shade to people that used the easier difficulty to get through some of the incredibly tricky levels, especially towards the end of that game. No shade. I think that game is a beautiful game. I think it has a wonderful story to tell. And yes, struggling is kind of part of how they tell that story. But I think even if you put that game on the easier difficulty setting, you're still struggling through that part. For sure. Those of you who've played it know exactly the parts that I'm talking about. All right, let's see. ShadeX, thank you so much for the super chat, says, God mode as a cheat has been a thing for years, since before Doom 1. Even Alex Kidd in Miracle World DX has infinite lives, just bought it. It's true. I remember it fondly. There were games using like God mode on Game Genie back on NES in the day that I still couldn't beat, even with God mode on Game Genie. Infinite lives, whatever, still couldn't figure out how to beat them. So, you know, the challenge is there. Let's see. Kevin Martin says, I don't like the auto adjust, that EA dynamic difficulty at all. If I want a challenge, keep it a challenge. I get that. Stephen Thomas says, I love that some games have changed the name from easy to tell me a story. I think it's perfect for someone like me who loves storytelling in games. Yes. I agree. I think that's a really nice way to go too. If you're just in it for story mode, that's always a good call. Good time zone to you too, Tyler Boyce, for sure. Let's see. I'm not following the conversation that's going on right now as far as some of the subtext, but mods, I trust you to be awesome and on it. Let's see. Andy T2K says, games are a form of art. Why get mad at people who want to enjoy it in different ways? Yeah, and like I said, I think this does present problems if you're talking about a competitive game, obviously, where your gameplay versus someone else's gameplay are directly measured in a way. I mean, the difference between a W and an L, but no one's really talking about that. It's more for games that are, like, I saw a lot of this conversation around the Dark Souls games. and From Software's titles, right? Because those games, the way that they are developed, are meant to be super difficult games. It's part of what From Software does. So people were saying, you know, taking those and giving them an easy mode would ruin those games or ruin the intention of how the developers want them to be played, right? And I'm like, look, if there are games released that don't have difficulty settings and you know are super hard, those games might just discourage people from buying them. And that's okay if that's what the dev is insistent on. However, if the dev wants to open it up to more people by including difficulty settings, I am all for that. And I said, as you know, as a parent to a very, very early just learning gamer, I am in favor of that. So thank you. Now, I did also see another conversation going on regarding games journalists reviewing games in a easier difficulty setting. And that again is tricky because if the dev came forward and said, you know, this is how we intended the game to be played, depending what the difficulty settings adjust, right? Because difficulty settings from franchise to franchise, from game to game, can include so many different little tricks or tips that it might, you know, you might be reviewing a completely different game than what the game is in normal mode. So that's a lot trickier. That being said, I do understand as someone who has worked in games journalism, when you're asked to go through a game that's a 60 to 100 hour game in 3 days, sometimes you feel like, oh God, at least this will give me a way to not have burnout and actually be able to sleep a little bit at night. So I certainly understand the very real world perspective on that as well. But to me, I think the better solution than reviewing it in easy mode is reviewing it in normal, but actually being given the time by your employer to get that review done in a normal amount of time without having to burn yourself out. But again, this is a problem that is way, way, way higher up the ladder than, you know, our opinions have the ability to change at all. Okay, let's see. Jimmy Sprinkle says, I bought Skullgirls for PS4. The game was difficult regardless of the difficulty setting, at least for me. Tyler Boyce says, there's a mentality of real gamers and get good, but the fact is that people play games for different reasons. Some play for challenging combat, some play for engaging story, include modes for all. And yes, people do play games for different reasons, and at different points in your life, you play games for different reasons. Like, for example, there's a lot of people who work in the games industry that I'm friends with now who've recently become new parents, and congratulations to those people. And, you know, as someone who remembers what it was like trying to get through games in, you know, when you have a newborn at home, it's a lot. And maybe you're like, I just want to experience this story, but I don't have the hours. This could be a good option for those people too. Even if you are normally someone who wants to invest 100+ hours to get good at a game. Different phases of life as well. Kevin Shea says, losing to my then 4-year-old niece at Minion Rush makes me think that only adults need God mode. You know, they do say our hand-eye coordination peaks in our late teens. So we're only, as far as our skill level to a particular game, we're only going downhill from there. I'm so sorry. It's why esports competitors are usually so young. That's why. Hemar Jubai says, I generally think that if you're going to play a competitive game, you should learn the game and get good to an extent, for sure. Mr. Yasman says, I remember hearing a developer, I think it was Ace Combat 7 dev, was mad on a website because they reviewed the game on a lower difficulty. Right. I think that opens a can of worms. I think any type of competition in a game opens a can of worms. I think even dynamic difficulty where it's being adjusted for you and that's not your choice is also another thing. But regarding single player, story-driven games, even just single player experiences, it's not hurting me what somebody else does with their game. Yay that they get to experience it. And then when we sit down and have a conversation about what we both experienced, I would love it if someone else experienced it on a different challenge rating or difficulty rating than me, because then we have more to talk about. What was different in your experience? What parts did you find the hardest and why? What parts did I find the hardest and why? And that could be that could be a very different experience, or it could be exactly the same depending on what the difficulty settings modify. Tyler Boy says, I was primarily thinking of God mode as God mode in Assassin's Creed, where the player becomes immortal and can literally fly over all the free-running obstacles. Yeah, God mode means something different to lots of different people. But basically, it's like an invincibility mode where you cannot die. So you can play through the game without worrying about death and respawn, whatever that is for that game. Summoner is talking about saying get good and whether or not people consider get good an insult. I actually really liked a tweet by Steven Spawn recently who said his new response to people when they say to him get good is learn empathy. And I was like, that's going to be my new favorite thing. Like, yes, is it kind of like a mom response? But like, yes, also learn empathy though. Like if someone's throwing get good in your face as an insult, feel free to respond back with learn empathy. I think that's hilarious. Mr. Yasman says, I used to play games on easy and a few years ago now play on normal. The only time I increase difficulty is just to unlock trophies and achievements, which is totally fine and good on you. Kevin says, kind of off topic, but how old should a child be before we let them get into gaming? Totally up to each individual parent. We started introducing Logan to very easy touchscreen educational games from an early age. Not super early, but you know, when he was old enough to kind of understand them to help him gamify his learning. When I was a kid, I loved learning games on the NES or like on original floppy disks. And that is how I remembered a lot of information as a kid. And I'm a big fan of games for education. So we started him with some touchscreen stuff, and now we're starting to introduce a little bit more complexity in his gaming. He's kind of taking to it, kind of not, so we might put pause on that for a little bit and then come back to it when his fine motor skills are a little bit more developed. We'll see. But that's just my thought. Every parent's different. Andy T2K says, easy mode ruining a game is like pineapple on pizza. If you don't like it, then you don't need to have at it, but it existing doesn't affect you at all. As someone who likes pineapple on pizza, don't shame me. I agree. Okay, cool. So yeah, thank you guys all for weighing in on that topic. I know it's interesting for me because I can certainly, as someone who, like I said, lived in the era of original NES games, some which you still couldn't beat even with Game Genie, I certainly understand the like, yes, I beat this game, I feel amazing, and having someone be able to say they also beat the game, but without going through a lot of what you went through, I understand the knee-jerk reaction of feeling like, well, that's not fair. However, it's not a competition. Let everybody enjoy stuff. Like, I feel like as I've gotten older, I've totally understood that. And even then, there was stuff like Game Genie and cheat codes if you needed it. So we keep recycling this topic. And of course, the Psychonauts 2 news that they're having an invincibility mode is what respawned this conversation. But I feel like it's good to have from time to time and just kind of check in and see where everybody's at with it, because my feelings on it have certainly changed over the years as I play more games and meet different types of gamers. So ultimately, I hope everyone is able to enjoy the games they love. Cheers. That's how I'm going to wrap up that one. Shade X says, by the way, God mode and dog mode is a thing in the game Rise of the Triad. When you get the God mode power-up, you yawn in the game. Dog mode turns you into a dog. Fair point, and thank you for the clarification. All right, so the next topic I wanted to talk about today, I know a lot of you have been looking forward to, and this is the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck, which I didn't see coming. I don't know about any of you, but I was like, what? I was at the aquarium yesterday. We took Logan to the aquarium, my husband and I, and suddenly my phone is blowing up from my friends who were like, oh my gosh, did you see this? The Steam Deck, Valve made a handheld portable gaming system, rah! So that's what happened. The Steam Deck is what it's called. Valve surprised everybody by making a handheld portable gaming PC machine, essentially. So it's directly tied into your Steam. As soon as you power it on, it gives you your entire Steam library, and it's much more of like a Switch experience, but for your PC games. Now, I have hyped the heck out of Alienware's Concept UFO handheld PC gaming device over the years, saying it's like a Switch for PC gaming, and I can't wait to get it. It's interesting, the difference in my enthusiasm levels for this great things and not necessarily deliver. I just want to make sure, okay, I just heard a thing. Just want to make sure we're still going. Are we still going? Oh, buffering, frozen. Let's see. Hold on. Are we back? 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 Let me know. Let me know. And we're back. Okay, great. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Just making sure I've caught up with everybody. Yours froze too. But we're back now. Okay, great. But yeah, so I mean, for the concept UFO, because I held it in my hands, I saw it running games super well. I felt how heavy it was. I think because of that tangible nature, I was like, oh, I want one of these. Like, I know what this is and I want one. Now, my reservations that I have with the Steam Deck, I know a lot of people are super stoked for it. My reservations are from a performance standpoint, from a heat standpoint, and the button and trigger layout. These are all things that I'm like, and the size, I'm like, yeah, but how much would I actually use this is my question. And I say that because for a PC gaming experience, I love keyboard and mouse as my input. That's part of why I'm such a hardcore PC gamer. I love the high-end performance. I love the customization options. I love the keyboard and mouse input, right? So if you're like, hey, you're gonna max out at 720p, your performance is going to be run off an APU, granted an AMD custom APU, so it's Zen 2 architecture and RDNA, which powerhouse, probably will kill at 720p. I don't know how hot it's going to run, and that controller button layout almost looks to combine like Xbox buttons with PlayStation's triggers, and I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't know if I would ever choose. I would probably never choose it over my actual gaming PC. And even if I went on a trip, would I choose it over this laptop? I don't know. So my Switch has been great. Now, granted, yes, are there indie PC games I would love to play on something portable like a Switch? Yes. But then we also have to talk about cloud gaming through Game Pass Ultimate and other cloud gaming servers. Can I get those games there, and can I do it on my phone with maybe the same performance for a Steam Deck? I don't know. Also, Valve's track record with hardware between the Steam Link and the controllers hasn't been the best executed. So I've got a lot of questions. I did not pre-order today. I did put out a tweet asking if anyone pre-ordered today. Let me go ahead and just pull up the results of that tweet as of right now are, because people have been voting kind of all day. 55% said no pre-order for me. 33% said still undecided, and 12% said, yep, I pre-ordered today. So where are you guys standing on the Steam Deck? Are you stoked for it? Are there things you still want to know? And did you pre-order today? Did anyone actually pre-order and get it today? I saw Gary Whitta did, and I'm interested for that. Tyler Boy says, to be fair, I almost bought a Switch for The Witcher 3 alone. So the attraction of a portable PC games is palpable. Get that? Summoner says, I think I'd rather just play on the computer, particularly if I had a gaming machine laptop rather than the handheld. Anthony Carboni's here and says, I pre-ordered the heck out of it. Anthony, why did you pre-order the heck out of it? I want to hear your pitch. Tell me. Rob K, thank you for the super chat, says the Steam Deck has pinky and ring finger buttons plus 2 touchpads. It seems like a simple addition to a handheld game system, but I think it's awesome. Again, I don't know how I feel about it until it's actually in my hands. I'm questioning things. Lycidon says, I want to stream my PC games to it from my home PC and lay in bed. I have also had problems, like when Steam Link was a thing, and like you can actually do that right now between your Xbox and your PC. It's never worked awesome for me. If I can see it work in practice, I will become a believer. But that has never worked for me personally. Let's see. I should also mention that with the Steam Deck, it's going to be a separate purchase, but they did mention a dock for it, sold separately, but the dock will allow you to hook up external displays, wired networking, USB peripherals, even a USB-C power hub if you so choose, which is cool. But again, that's to be sold separately at some point in the future. Stephen Patterson says, I have a Switch and I haven't used it in a while. I don't need another handheld. My phone games are good enough for me. RCV says, I have a computer near my bed. Problem solved. Good for you. Anthony Carboni says, I'm going to wipe the SteamOS, throw on a gaming-focused Windows 10 build, and play everything I ever wanted. Now, see, Anthony, that's when I checked out the Concept UFO, it was running full Windows 10. It wasn't running a SteamOS. And that was part of the appeal for me, so I totally get that. Anthony, when you get yours, I'm putting out the same pitch to you that I put out to Gary Whitta. Can I come over and just see it? Can you be my, like, cool kid friend that has the new toys early? And then I'll just come over and see it. Now, at that point, if I'm like, oh, this is amazing, I want it, it'll probably be back ordered through the end of 2022, and I'll be SOL. But I would love to actually see it when you get yours. Cyber Reaper says, looking at prices for gaming PCs, I think I'll just stick with cloud gaming. Anthony says, I'm finally going to play GameCube on the go. Anthony, that's your dream. It's been your dream this whole time, and I'm happy for you. Crazy Taxi. Here it is. Hemer Dubai says, I heard that the Steam Deck can run Windows 10. I have also heard that. Also, I should mention, for some people who tried to pre-order it today, they were getting an error that said your account is too new, like their Steam account is too new. But I have friends who had Steam accounts that were like between 10 and 17 years old that still got the your account is too new bug. So I don't know what's up with that. If any of you got that bug and have figured it out, let me know. Anthony says, I'll come to you. It can go anywhere. Hilarious. But yes, it can. I mean, that's the draw. Cyber Reaper says, also, I'd like to try cloud gaming on a 5G connection. Again, in my experience, so I have Cloud G available in my area, not at my house, but like if I drive a short distance, I can get it. It's been hit or miss, like a lot of this new tech. Tyler says, I hadn't even thought about game emulator apps. Imagine getting a Steam Deck just to play Pokemon Yellow on Play Guy. Now, see, a lot of people said that, and then they were like, is the Steam Deck going to be the Switch killer if everyone can just get on there and emulate? Also a thing to think about. Summoner says, Trisha needs to get a demo unit from Steve so she can review, or from Steam so she can review it on stream. Dude, if I could, I don't think I have connections like that at Valve. I don't know anyone who does, but hey, if you're sending out review units, I will 100% make a review on it. For sure. Michael Time Lord says, Trisha, the highest priced one is still under 700 gigs of internal storage. I don't see that going well for those who want to play games like Warzone or the new Battlefield. It's not going to go well. So yes, I should mention the Steam Deck starts at $399 for the 64 gigabyte model, which of course the internet was like, 64 gigabytes, what's that going to hold? There is expandable storage on it by way of an SD slot or a micro SD card slot, but your read and write speeds on those are not going to be the same as an internal. So $399 for the 64 gigabyte, $529 for the 256, and $649 for the 512. And the top two models, they have said that is NVMe SSD storage, whereas the 64 gigabyte is not. So you're going to want to think about that as well for the load and save times for the types of games you play, etc. And that's a big thing too, for sure. Especially if you're going to put Windows on it. Oh, so funny. Anthony says, I mean, if you're looking into a Switch OLED and you have a sizable Steam library, it's just $100 more for the base model. That is, well, it's not even, because wasn't the Switch OLED $350? So this is only $50 more for the base model. But I guess if you're saying $100 more for the middle one, no. Yeah, Dragon King says 64 gigabytes eMMC sucks. Yeah, well, a lot of people feel that way. Mr. Yazman says, can we use external HDD and SSD devices when we use docking? I don't know, and that's a good question. So yeah, this kind of took the world by storm. Like I said, I was at the aquarium and my phone was like blowing up and I was like, what is even happening? But when I originally held and got to check out the Concept UFO, which was like, oh my God, this is a handheld Windows PC gaming I absolutely need. And so it was interesting to me that, yeah, just the announcement from Valve yesterday, maybe it's because I wasn't at my computer and in that mindset, or maybe it's because of Valve's track record, or maybe it's because of the lackluster storage, or maybe it's because I haven't actually seen it to verify to myself that it's real and it works, my excitement level was severely diminished. And I saw a lot of my friends like Anthony who were like, cannot wait to get hands on this, which I totally understand. And I just question why I didn't immediately feel like that, because normally I feel like I would have. Let's see. Scott says, really, I think I'm just going to wait for the chip shortage to end and some actual reviews of it to come out first. I know IGN got some hands-on time with it, but I didn't get a chance to read their entire article. I just saw that they did. Joshua Underwood says, the Switch is awesome for one reason. Nintendo's the only company who recognizes that game consoles are toys, not a media platform, not a content delivery system, and not an app store. Well, and that's a good point, especially when you want to get into like Apple Arcade or something like that. And a little bit later in today's happy hour, we're going to talk about Netflix getting into the gaming scene, and that is right on par with what you were just talking about. All right, so it looks like this audience is pretty split on the Steam Deck as well, just about with what my Twitter poll today results were. So Twitter poll again, 12% of people were like, yes, pre-ordered it today. 34% of people were like undecided, and everybody else was rocking and rolling in that, yeah, not for me, probably. So we'll see what happens. I hope that this is the piece of hardware that Valve knocks out of the park. I have been burnt by Steam Link and the Steam controller and the Steam machine, which ultimately the hardware was not created by Valve for the Steam machines. They were created by other manufacturers, but it never did it. And part of honestly what killed the Steam machine for me was Steam OS. Didn't love it. Didn't like it. A lot of games weren't native to Steam OS, which meant that I had to stream them from my computer that was upstairs to my Steam box. And spoiler alert, it didn't go well. Anytime that like multiple enemies had to spawn at once, it was like buffer. Oh, we're back and you're dead. So it was not an enjoyable experience unless the game could run natively on Steam OS, which was a limited amount of games. So we'll see. Tyler Boy says, oh wow, I totally forgot about the Steam machine, probably for the best. And Kez says, yeah, hi Kezzy, by the way. Kez says, yeah, the Steam OS is very clunky, for sure. So we'll see what happens. I would like it to be awesome. I hope that I'm totally blown away when it's out in the wild and it's the best thing ever, and I'm going to be mad at myself for not pre-ordering it, which honestly is what happened to me with the Switch. Didn't pre-order it at all, waited till people actually got them, and then were like, oh no, this is the best. And then I ordered one and got one for myself. But you know, it sometimes takes me a little while to warm up with certain things. So there it is. Now, not to be confused with the Steam Deck, the Stream Deck Mark II was announced on the same day, which I'm sure Elgato was super pissed about. But no one knew Valve was going to announce the Steam Deck. So, surprise. But yes, Elgato had their 2021 update, which unveiled a new webcam, a new Stream Deck, and some other new features that I'll talk about in just a moment. But yeah, that was a funny mix-up, and a lot of people were real confused. Steam Deck versus Stream Deck. So anyway, some of the new stuff that Elgato unveiled was a new webcam that they're calling the Elgato Face Cam. It's $200, so it is not cheap. It's a 1080p 60 frame per second webcam that has a Sony Starvis CMOS sensor built into it. So it's made to be a much more premium webcam for people who don't have an Elgato Cam Link 2 DSLR or mirrorless camera setup. So this is a nice option for those people. I saw Felicia Day did a little screen cap with her new Elgato cam because she was sent one to test out, and it looked really nice. I don't know if it's, competitive. Elgato usually prices their gear a little bit more on the high end, to say the least. So I don't know how it compares with kind of the other premium webcam offerings out there. I did look at a lot of those before I went home for vacation to see if I wanted to go with a nice camera or go with a premium webcam. And most of them are in the $170 to $225 range from what I could find. So this is right smack in the middle of that. But that's the idea for it. Summoner says, sheesh, $200, and that'll be US dollars. So down under in New Zealand, that's probably going to be $400. Yeah, it's not cheap. It is not cheap. So that's the face cam, the unveiled. They also said that if you're used to using Elgato's audio equipment, their microphones and whatnot, their Wavelength software, which previously you could only access if you owned an Elgato microphone, now that's open to everybody. The Wave XLR is a new XLR audio interface, again, open to any XLR mics you might have, even like whether or not they're Elgato, that allow a mute button, a control toggle, etc. And the Stream Deck Mark II, which is the same size and the same price as the previous Stream Deck, although now there's detachable face plates if you want to get artsy fartsy with the faceplate of your Stream Deck. I prefer the black, I think. I prefer the understated with the glowy buttons. I don't know that I need like a super artsy faceplate on it, but you now have that option. They changed the desk mount to only be one angle now instead of a few, which that thing does fall from time to time, so I think that's probably based on user feedback. And a detachable USB instead of or USB-C cable instead of a always connected one. So just minor improvements for usability, but I think people are really gonna like them. But yeah, very funny that the Stream Deck Mark II and the Steam Deck both were announced like not only on the same day, but like at the same time. Very confusing for people. Very confusing for people. And Elgato also announced new mounts, new mic arms, new RGB light strips. And this is kind of cool. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, so if you have, let me know. A digital studio configuration tool that's browser-based. So I guess you can like upload a picture of your studio and then do all sorts of AI overlays and stuff like that to see or plan out what your studio could look like with all this sweet Elgato gear. Like I said, I haven't played around with it yet, but I mean, if it's free and it's browser based, that's cool. Let's see. Michael Time Lord says, my studio got one to review here in Las Vegas. Okay, cool. I assume you're talking about the Elgato face cam. It's great. A $200 price tag on it. It feels cheap, and my biggest concern is the new power source through the USB-A. I fear overheating with it. Now, I did read, Michael, not to get too like hardware nerdy on you, but I did read that they have special cooling built into that face cam specifically for people who are worried about overheating issues. If you stream for like a 24-hour plus charity stream or something like that, they want to make sure that the cam's okay and can run with you. And they're claiming that it should be because of this type of cooling that they've put into the webcam. So there is no mic in the webcam, by the way, which is a feature that other premium webcams usually offer. But Elgato came out and was like, who actually uses the mic in their webcam anyway if you're looking for premium streaming quality? Which to that I say, yeah. I've never once used my webcam microphone. If you're using a laptop, your internal might even be better than your webcam. It depends. But for the streaming market that's normally shopping Elgato, they probably have a separate microphone. So I get that. But good to note that it doesn't have it in case you are counting on that as a feature. Let's see. And the Scream Deck comes out this Halloween, says Daniel Casaban. Yes. So my question to you guys, this is just kind of a fun food for thought. To you, what is the most important aspect of a stream? Whether you are the one streaming or you're the one watching the stream. Is there a specific piece of equipment or a specific aspect of a stream that you're like, that is, I think, the most important and where you should place your priority? Is it audio? Is it video? Is it lighting? Is it how fast you can push out the frames for certain games? Is it the graphic design? Let me know. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. What element do you think is the most important of a stream? Let's see. Gabriel Matthews says sound. Tyler says, I think audio quality. Audio, says Dragon King. Okay, so everyone's pretty much universal on audio. Audio is the biggest deal when it comes to a stream. Jimmy Sprinkle says, I like the audio and being an engineer. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Rob K says, most important is user interface and frame rate. And user interface is so important. It's why a lot of people that I know have watched my content here on YouTube, even though I'm like, hey, I'm streaming on Twitch all the time, just never got into the Twitch user interface. and, don't want to watch stuff over there, which I understand, and vice versa with Twitch to YouTube. Or when, like for me, the whole maybe 5 times, I can count them on one hand, that I tried streaming to Facebook Live, the back end user experience for the streamer is just not there yet, and it's frustrating. It's a little frustrating. Daniel Casabon says, as a graphic artist, I would say graphic design. Graphic design is very important, yeah. Oh, the most important part of the stream is you. But Scott actually said it's the host. If they aren't interesting, I won't watch, which I totally get. But Tyler, you made me laugh when you said that. Cyber Reaper says audio, especially on podcasts, plus sympathy of the person streaming. Totally makes sense. Steven Patterson says combination between video and audio quality. I want to both hear and see you clearly. I'll skip watching a stream if I can stream in 720p plus. Okay, that makes sense. If I have a stream running in the background, audio is king, which definitely makes sense. Al Captain Plays, however, says video. If they don't have a webcam, I feel less engaged immediately and honestly probably won't watch. If game quality is bad, I can't follow. I get that. I get that. Well, thank you everybody for weighing in on that one. I always think that's such an interesting discussion. As someone who does really like to stream, I'm always looking to up my game too. And anytime new equipment comes out, like all the Elgato announcements, or just kind of like taking a poll on what viewers think is most important, kind of helps me to reorganize. So I appreciate that. All right. We teased this a bit earlier when we were talking about games as a toy versus games as a content delivery method, but Netflix is getting into video games, like for realsy this time. Netflix has hired a former EA and Facebook exec, Mike Verdu, to lead the effort as VP of Games Development. So that's their title. And what they said was the idea is to offer video games on Netflix's streaming platform within the next year. According to a person familiar with the situation, so this is what someone reported, the games will appear alongside current fare as a new programming genre. So similar to what Netflix did with their documentaries or stand-up specials, now we'll have video games as like its own separate genre of content. I have so many questions. So what is the controller for this? Are you using your like television or Roku remote, or are they releasing some type of peripheral of their own? Is there other hardware you need to own in addition to the controller? Or maybe it's not a proprietary controller. Maybe it's just Bluetooth, but Bluetooth to what? However you're accessing Netflix. I have so many questions with this. Obviously, Netflix has kind of dabbled before. They're doing a lot of video game traditional cinema, television shows, cartoons, movies, etc. They've done previous interactive shows on Netflix where like you watch it and then get to decide what happens next, which is really cool. And so yeah, I have a lot of questions. I don't know if these games are going to be cloud-based or if you're going to have to install them locally to a specific device. So what do you think they're doing with this? And even a more fun question, what do you think they could do correctly that would knock it out of the ballpark? Himura Jube says, I'd really like to know what hardware they plan on using. Party games would be awesome with Netflix. Good call, if there was a way they could connect everybody. ShadeX says, Netflix is on my Samsung TV and I can connect a mouse and keyboard to it. Okay, maybe. Summoner says, controller is the big question. It would have to tie to every app Netflix has somehow. How would that work? I don't know. Kelly says, I was waiting to see if Netflix would go there. So Netflix has been looking for a way to expand to beat out the competition. They don't just want to be a content delivery platform as far as traditional content. And that's why they're looking to expand in this way. But, it remains to be seen if they'll be able to pull it off. Games and More says, you don't go to Netflix for games, just saying. I get it. But they want you to, and apparently within the next year. Ambitious. Himura Jubai says, controller support is key, but party games would give them the biggest push. Steven says, if you're watching Netflix on Xbox or PlayStation, they could somehow utilize the existing hardware. Maybe. So then would it just be games if you're accessing Netflix off of a gaming piece of hardware already? It's very interesting. Filthy Danimal says, well, now that I know they've employed a former senior EA member of staff, I don't think it'll be for me. Ooh, shade. So much shade. I guess you're not looking forward to EA Play next week. Scott says, I still hate watch parties on all platforms because they're all still pretty bad. I want to watch my show and see and hear my friends simultaneously. Very hard. So watch parties, I think, are best utilized when you have like a video chat on a laptop. This was me opening a laptop, by the way. A video chat on a laptop open next to you so you can still see and hear your friends and you know you're watching it at the same time. It saves you from doing what we did in my last Twitch watch party when we watched Discovery of Witches, where it was like 3, 2, 1, play! And then you're still probably like a second off. I did not know the Mysterium Convention was this weekend, Thomas. Thank you for sharing that. They could go deeper into interactive movies. Yeah, kind of blurring the line between FMV games and interactive movies for sure. Mark G says they need to add something with all the new competition in the field and the amount they cost now. Yeah, totally. Shade X says watch party on Disney Plus. We've never gotten that to work. I haven't tried it, to be frank, but I get it. BW1 says interesting for Netflix with Game Pass, Luna, and Stadia in the mix. Makes me wonder what will be the key difference they will offer. Maybe actual good movie tie-in games? I don't know. Scott says your issue with the side chats for watch parties is that the audio feedback can become super problematic. I get that. Yeah, I get that too. It's very interesting. I don't know what I think Netflix could do to knock it out of the park. I liked what Amazon Luna did with the Luna controller because it really helped to reduce the input lag. You can still use whatever controller you want, but it did help to reduce the input lag. And the controller went directly to their cloud. So I wonder if Netflix could maybe do a similar thing. But yeah, it's going to be real interesting. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, that's a thing that's apparently happening within the next year. So get ready, Netflix subscribers. All right, some random news headlines that made way this week. I'm like, oh, we've been chatting for a long time today, but I don't care. I'm having fun. Some random headlines that made it this week that I wanted to mention just very quickly are Resident Evil Reverse got delayed again, by the way. It's now coming in 2022. There are now Mario-themed edible arrangements you can order from Edible Arrangements. They are basically regular edible arrangements, but like with Mario's face slapped on a pineapple or something. In my opinion, you might think they're super cool. That was my take on them. As far Xbox Series S and X might be getting a new controller. I mean, yes, probably Xbox will redesign that controller at some point in the future, but Phil Spencer said on an interview with Kinda Funny, shout out to my Kinda Funny friends, I think Sony's done a nice job with their controller. We kind of look at some of that and think, are there things that we should go do? So maybe we'll start seeing like a DualSense haptic feedback kind of thing in a future Xbox Series X or Series S controller. I don't know, but as someone who really enjoys the DualSense controller, I think that would be cool, and imitation's the sincerest form of flattery. Just don't get sued for copyright infringement. Huzzah! So yes, that's this week's Dragonrider Happy Hour. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in today. Thank you for sharing a drink and winding down your work week with me, kicking off your weekend with me. After I finish these, I always tear down the studio, reset it up upstairs, and then go into photoshopping a thumbnail and doing all the chapters and that kind of stuff for this. So my day's not officially done until a little bit after this, but this helps to get me relaxed and yeah, to kick off the weekend. So the next time that I will be live is Sunday. I will be live for the Sunday morning stream at 10 a.m. Pacific on Twitch. And if I have time and energy to stream between now and then, I will. Twitch streaming is my happy place. So when I feel like I've got the energy to do that, then that's what I like to do. So thank you so much for discussing the news with me this week. I knew this would be a big news week because of everything that kind of happened. But I always appreciate all of your input and insight. You know, like I said, if this were not a lockdown situation, and even though, you know, things have opened up now more for sure, I'm still not at a point where me and my friends are meeting up at a bar every Friday or anything like that. But if we were, or I was seeing people in studio again for jobs, we'd be discussing this stuff on the regular. And now you are my community to do that with, since, you know, you're my friends. Thanks for coming over to my bar and hanging out. It's been awesome. Hey. So yeah, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, a fantastic weekend, and I will see some of you Sunday morning for the Sunday morning stream. And Kezi, if you're still here, I do still have, Kezi helped me out with a Resident Evil Village jump scare highlight cut. I have it. I haven't uploaded it yet, but I will. I know I keep saying that, but I actually will. I'm a little behind in work, in case you can't tell, but I'll get there. All right. Much love, everybody, and see you soon. Bye, friends.